Okay. Mark McAfee is the founder and CEO of McAfee Farms and Organic Pastures Dairy. He's pre-med trained, a retired paramedic, and a health department medical educator. Mark has lectured on raw milk production, food safety, and nutrition at Stanford Medical School, Rutgers University, 30 different states, and internationally. He developed and implemented award-winning food safety plans and recently founded the Raw Milk Institute, which is a resource for both the producers and consumers of raw milk nationwide, I believe, all over the United States. He mentors farmers in the production of safe raw milk, educates consumers about the benefits of this living, healthy, nutrient-dense, delicious food that promotes, and he promotes consumer access to raw milk through scientific research and legislative support. Mark is a longtime member and supporter of PP&F. And did you want to add anything before we join?
Well, just that he knows more about the cleanliness of raw milk, keeping it bacteriologically safe, and testing to make sure it is, than the people that are testing his milk and trying to make problems for us.
And David personally drinks how many?
I drink between 6 and 7 quarts a week of Organic Pastures milk, and I have been for, I have no idea how many years. 7, 8, 9, 10. Right, and that's why I'm obese and have no energy.
Yeah. So please join me in welcoming Mark McAfee.
I'd like to start my presentation in the back of the room by having Annie come up and start me off. She's got a little story to tell. She's also the one who's welcomed us into her home. My wife and I are staying with her tonight, and it's taxiing me around. So start with your story.
Hey, hi everybody. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to introduce Mark tonight. I'm just going to tell my story about how I came to be familiar with the Price-Pottenger Foundation and with Organic Pastures Dairy. Several years ago, the youngest of my 4 children had some serious dental problems. He came home from the dentist with a referral to an endodontist for a root canal. And he had already had a lot of fillings, and at this point he was just pretty demoralized. He said, "Please, Mom, don't make me do it." So at that time I had just finished reading Nutrition and Physical Degeneration by Dr. Weston Price. And so I made a deal with him. And I said, "You know what, if you will follow this program and not give me any guff for the next 12 months, I won't make you go back to the dentist. And we'll see what happens. We'll send you back in a year. And if everything's okay, everything's okay. And if not, then we'll go forward with the root canal." So he agreed. And what I actually had him do, knowing that a 16-year-old wasn't likely to eat what I told him to eat every day, I insisted on a raw dairy smoothie every morning. So I used the Organic Pastures raw milk, raw cream ice cream that I made at home, raw kefir, a couple of raw egg yolks, some Green Pastures fermented cod liver oil, and he drank that every morning. And I asked him also to have 1 cup of bone broth a day, and once a week to have liver pate. So he agreed to all of that, and then the rest of the time I'm sure he ate at Mexican restaurants, and right, Jack in the Box, God only knows what he ate. But after 12 months, he went back to the dentist, and he came home from his visit with a big smile on his face, and he said, "You're not going to believe it, Mom, but this is the first time in my life I've ever come back from the dentist with nothing more than a referral to come back in 6 months for a cleaning."
Yay.
And I said, "So no more need for a root canal?" And he said no. He showed me his x-rays. Everything was clean and beautiful. And I really credit this gentleman and his lovely wife for providing the nutrient density that was required to remineralize his teeth. And so that experience changed my life. And I became an educator. I educated myself first. And then I started educating others about Weston Price and about things like raw dairy and what I call grease, guts, bones, grass shoots, and pickles. So those are the 6 principles of indigenous cultures, and I'm just going to hold this up real quickly. I'm holding another 6-week series. I've been doing this for about 3 years, and this one will be up in Del Mar for those of you in North County who have been unable to attend down here in San Diego. So that begins June 4th, and with that I will introduce Mark McAfee of Organic Pastures.
All right, you just got to see the farmer and the consumer connect right there. And that's the bottom line tonight. You know, we just came through a little bit of a hurdle this last week with the recall. Anybody heard about the recall?
Yes.
Everybody's heard. So is the choir here tonight? Is this the choir? Is this like the foundation of like, the true grassroots? Okay. So I don't have to go back to raw milk 101. I can actually go to more of a dance class here into what's going on, tell you the nitty gritty. Okay. Is there anybody that doesn't know about raw milk and they're newcomers tonight? Is there anybody that doesn't know anything about raw milk? Okay. This may come as a complete shock to you. You're about ready to get on a mothership and go someplace else. So be aware that there may be some advanced stuff. Please ask questions because there may be some stuff way beyond where you might be. That said, most people in the room understand a lot about raw milk. So anyway, I'll take everybody through as much as I can. This last week's always been stressful for us if there's ever been a recall because we get hammered by consumers saying, I want my raw milk. And last week when we were shut down, it was based on one batch of raw cream that was found to have one little bit of Campylobacter in it. Prior to 1972, Campylobacter was not considered a human pathogen. It was considered normal to have a Campylobacter immunity, and it's the most common foodborne illness in the United States. Campylobacter causes between 2 and 4 million cases of diarrhea. Campylobacter in the United States. Once you've got it once, you never have it again. You get immunity to it. But since 1972, because of our ever waning, ever more and more depressed immune systems, which is basically the biodiversity of gut bacteria you have in your intestines, the more and more susceptible that people are that live in the inner cities that don't have contact with farm animals and natural wildlife become sick from Campylobacter. So, with 1,000 cases a day being experienced in California, and 70% of all poultry found in your local store having Campylobacter, it's interesting that you find one batch of raw cream, and the milk it came from being negative for Campylobacter, and you shut down a company with 62 employees and 400 stores and raw milk, when in fact they don't go to shut down all the stores that have Campylobacter in their poultry. So it's very interesting to see the political unravelings of this as well as what's actually happening with people. But our team at Organic Pastures Dairy is not like any other team. It sees the bigger reality and sees these things as attempts on our lives as a whole. And they're not going to get us to go away. This stimulates further growth. This is just an exciting little stimulus to go forward. There's an inverse relationship, and I'm highly quoted on this, inverse relationship between harassment of raw milk and stimulus and education of its growth in the market. The more you harass it, the more it grows. And that's really weird because it infuriates the FDA and the CDFA and those that want me to go away. Because the more they try to make me go away, the more we appear stronger. And the more the consumers get it and understand immunity, and things are getting better and better. Better and better and bigger and bigger. So last week's kind of been a little bit of a challenge. It always is, because in order to have raw milk in the marketplace, feeding people, you have to be subject to regulators and inspectors. And that's a really tough thing because they want something different than I want. So you kind of have to walk that line between what is it in fact that they want that doesn't destroy what I want, and find some kind of diplomatic middle thing, because yeah, I could go to the courts and sue them, but I'd be paying the attorneys and end up losing because judges aren't going to side with me. Or I could go to the legislature and have somebody overturn the law because they don't, the big agriculture interests. But what we found is the best thing to do is simply comply 100% with a big smile immediately and get it back on the shelf and continue to build the market and educate people. And that's precisely what we've done and what we did. And all the tests came back completely negative across the board, beautifully, including our maximum coliform level at 3, which you're allowed 10. And our bacteria counts can be up to 15,000. We're running at 660. So very, very, very good bacteria counts. And all surface areas were fine. No pathogens found anywhere as of 10 o'clock this morning. They released us and we're back to go. But I will share something with you that I thought was a very interesting conversation I had with Steve McGinnis, who's a great inspector from CDFA. Good guy. Kind of a puppet, nonetheless. He's the guy that goes out there and inspects us and takes us through this journey. Steve told me, he says, Mark, we want you to have different break rooms for your employees. They can't eat together anymore. We don't want your milkers to ever come in contact with the people that work in your creamery. And we don't want the people that work in your cheese plant to ever come in contact with people that work in your creamery. Or the people that feed your chickens and your eggs, we don't want them to ever come in contact with people who work in your creamery. And we don't want the people that work with your calves to come in contact. It was very clear to me, this is exactly what they want to do our food too. That they are making us try to live in a bubble of trouble. I think you're probably all aware of that child that was born without an immune system, right? They kept him in a vacuum, literally couldn't touch anybody, couldn't eat anything that was sterilized, and as soon as he did, he died. The bottom line is, that's kind of where we're going in America. If you think about autism, 1 in 54 kids, you're looking at diabetes hitting 1 in 3 kids now, and you see obesity going crazy, and asthma killing 4,000 kids a year, and MRSA, that's resistant Staph aureus, killing 20,000 people a year. We are in a bubble of trouble because we segregated ourselves from the immune system environment in which we're supposed to be compatible and enjoyable with, right? Now we're paying the price of leaving the farm, but yet we're trying to walk back to the farm now. And as you walk back to the farm, you get yourself caught in an immune system double jeopardy because you've left the farm and now you have to regain the immune system experience of the farm to be whole, complete, and compatible with life on Earth. So that's what this recall was all about. And the discussion I had with our inspector this morning was a very heartfelt brother-to-brother kind of conversation because I was representing peace, he was representing war, I was probiotic, he was antibiotic, I was living, he was sterilized. And we're having this really good conversation. And I said, you know what? I have to keep our milk on the shelf, and we're going to do whatever we have to do that. But you know what? Breaking up our family at lunch isn't going to happen. We'll do washing of hands. We'll leave our boots outside. We'll mop the floors, but we're going to eat together. So it really is that kind of a conversation going on at Organic Pastures Dairy where the regulators are saying, you got to be more like the pasteurized guys. And we're saying, I'm sorry. We know the truth of all that. We're going to share a lot of that detail tonight. But just to give you a little bit of a kind of a discourse of what happens at Organic Pastures Dairy as we kind of frontline this thing with the regulators that just want us to go away. But our consumers absolutely want us to stay. And it's exciting because I answer to our consumers. I don't answer to those guys. I answer to our consumers. And that's kind of an exciting thing. Tonight's presentation is called Sharing the Raw Milk Secret. It was actually developed for the Real Food Symposium that was held a couple weeks ago in Pasadena with Alina Luther, who does a great job there. And Blaine actually helped me. My wife, Blaine, gets a little credit for helping put this PowerPoint together. And if you don't like anything, ask her about it. If there's something you don't like, just tell her. She loves it. So.
Did you change the background color of those
No, I
slides?
didn't.
Okay,
So,
I'll take
if there's a
this
background
one.
color, she told me to change it. She has her master's in nursing education. She's a master at this stuff. It's like she's very, very retentive on these issues. And that's why it makes me look good. So I appreciate that very much. But anyway, sharing the raw milk secret is really a very interesting thing because under FDA rules at this point, it is not legal to post your testimonial about raw milk on my website. If you've experienced something positive about raw milk, Annie's story about her son and her teeth could not be presented on my website. That's called commercial speech. It's illegal. It's making a medical claim on food when only medical claims can be made on FDA-approved drugs. That we know killed several hundred thousand a year at least. Killed several hundred thousand people a year. That's being probably conservative. So bottom line is we share the raw milk secret firsthand, first person, with a documentary film person here, using my First Amendment rights. Because that, so far, is pretty much alive. Hasn't been killed off yet.
Except
So,
on your website.
Except, I can't do it on our website, but I can do it in first person. And any Price-Pottenger or West State Price, any organization that's a 501c3 nonprofit can put this information out and scream it up the world, no problem. But I can't use it as commercial representation for a product. So we share the raw milk secret. Tonight I've added a couple slides because I want to talk about some of the extreme bias that we've experienced here in the last week, just to give you kind of a note on what this is all about. You know, there's an incredible bias that's just demonstrated so clearly. In 2006, there was 1,600 people sickened in one outbreak from pasteurized milk at a CDFA-inspected pasteurized creamery. 1,600 people. There was no press release on it. They didn't write a press release. 1,600 people sickened. 7 ended up in the hospital. They shut the place down for 3 hours and didn't wait for any pathogen test to come back, which takes 7 to 8 days. And you know what? All good to go. No problem. What happened to Organic Pastures Dairy is very interesting too, because from January 1st, we found this out from the State Director of Public Health, one of the, Dr. Gellis. 31 people were reported to have reported illness from Campylobacter from January 1st to April 30th. 31 people in California. There were no hospitalizations. There were no positive tests to connect product with consumers. In other words, fecal sample from a consumer has a DNA genetic fingerprint you can actually check. Checking the products, there was no Campylobacter there and no Campylobacter DNA to check with the patient. So all of it was one of those 1,000 people a day Could have been raw milk. It could have been one of those thousands of people today that get Campylobacter. So there's no positive test. 2 to 4 million cases of Campylobacter nationally. A heightened surveillance was created because 10 people said that they drank Organic Pastures dairy milk out of those 31. There was 18 people that were sickened from the other brand, Clairvaux. So 18 from Clairvaux, 10 from Organic Pastures dairy, and 3 from some other place they didn't want to talk about where they got their raw milk from. Well, Wayne and I also know something else, and that is that we know that from our investigations of asking people, well, what did you tell the investigators? Well, I told them that I drank your milk. There are some people, I'm not showing how, and I don't want to avoid liability because I'm the guy that's responsible, but the bottom line is some people say if they get raw milk from some source other than a legal source, they will not expose their farmer. They'll just say, oh, I drank Organic Pastures. It's much easier to do that because it's not illegal to have gotten your milk from someplace that's producing raw milk and get that guy in trouble. Because the investigators will go out and ask that guy about production of raw milk and selling it. So we are a sitting duck in terms of liability. Anyway, with this history here, they did what's called heightened surveillance. Now that means they ignore 1,000 cases a day in California of Campylobacter that naturally occur because people bring chicken home and cut it up on their chopping boards at home and give the baby the pacifier and whatever happens in the house and you get Campylobacter. It's what you do. They ignored all those. They put us on heightened surveillance because they had 10 people that reported they drank raw milk from Organic Pastures dairy and filled out a specific questionnaire. That questionnaire is the only questionnaire in California that has a name brand at the top. Did you drink Organic Pastures dairy milk? Is written on the questionnaire. Doesn't say Horizon brand, doesn't say, it says Organic Pastures dairy. So very, very interesting heightened awareness. And there's something called PulseNet. I don't think I wrote it on here. PulseNet is a new thing that's happened just the last few years. The CDC has a national system where if you go to the doctor and you report an illness, your fecal sample or other culture is submitted into this library, this database, a national database, where they can actually count that fingerprint of that bacteria, which has a little DNA fingerprint. And then they add the history, drank raw milk, or ate spinach, or whatever it might be. I don't want to just say raw milk. And then if you have 2 or 3 of these things pop up, they have a report that spits out that has the overlaps. So you have raw milk, and you have people that have this fingerprint. If they match up, bingo, go check them out. So they really got this down to a science in terms of tracking you down and choking you out. So a whole new different way of surveilling. That's a good thing, it's a bad thing. It certainly keeps big outbreaks from control, a little bit more control. But it also does some other things too. It really feeds a lot of liability attorneys that love it. It reduces our choices in food. It reduces our immune system status like crazy because everybody's scared out of their minds to put any food out there that's whole, real, biodiverse, and alive because of the liability of ending up on PulseNet and having an attorney come after you and get $1 million from your insurance company. So very interesting shooting gallery here in terms of what's going on in this minefield in terms of this food reality. So you can kind of see the difference between how a pasteurized milk plant with 1,600 people sickened and a little raw milk plant here with biodiverse whole food product. It hasn't anybody in hospital and hasn't had any reports of illness for over 30 days, finding one cream sample with Campylobacter in it. So pretty, and the raw milk that it came from was negative. So very interesting to see the differences. I just thought I'd throw that out just as a starter. I am completely dedicated to upsetting you this evening and perhaps giving you a little hope for how it's going to get better. So here's some of the things we want to hit tonight. Kind of a status on the American immune system, what the immune system is, bacteria in the immune system, how they function together, the science of bacteria, the human genome, which is really cool. All of us have spent hundreds of millions of dollars in the Human Genome Project. That stuff they don't talk about because it doesn't sell drugs. Let me tell you, Human Genome Project's brilliant when it comes to actually understanding what our bodies are made of and how they work. But yet it doesn't sell drugs, so they don't talk about it. Let me tell you, that's powerful stuff. And then how raw milk supports the immune system and redefining what safe food is. Is safe food sterile? Or is safe food biodiverse and whole? What does safe mean? What does safe mean? One side believes one definition of what safe is, and the other side has a different. So they're actually 2 different polar places. One's the world's round, it's got a sun, it turns around. The other one's flat. It's just a whole different thing. Raw milk history and a little bit happening with what raw milk's coming on in the future. So these are the things we're going to touch on tonight. And anyway, well, the state of the American immune system is a plane crash. It is ugly. If you just look at every day, you had 7 747s crashing and killing everybody every morning and not being in the news. That's what's going on right now. That's what's going on. Conservatively. That's with MRSA, pharma errors, medical errors. That's not old age. That's not people that had a car wreck. I'm talking about a calamity of your immune system, autoimmune diseases, medical errors, cancers, things that can be mediated by good nutrition and a healthy lifestyle. It is horrible. On 911, 9/11, how many people died? What, 3 or 4 aircraft that crashed? So a couple hundred people died? They shut down the entire air system in the United States. We didn't fly for 5 days, was it? You couldn't get a crop duster to spray a crop. You couldn't go skydiving. You couldn't do anything. No airplanes flew after 4 planes crashed. I'm talking about 7 days, 7 planes a day crashing. That's the FDA difference between the FAA and the FDA. It's kind of interesting how the priorities are in terms of acute death versus insidious death that comes on over time. You can't point to an accident that's what caused it. And in fact, that's what's going on right now. You just don't see the forest for the trees because it's happening so much and so often. So people that drink raw milk and eat whole foods and go to farmers markets are opting off these airplanes. They're getting out of a different place to a long, healthy life and fertility and no diabetes and all these kinds of things. So that said, let's look a little bit here why we're having a food revolution. America sits out here by itself when you look at the cost per person to treat all these diseases and illnesses we have coming on. That's $7,300 per person per year. Now that means if you don't have any dollars spent on you, that means somebody's getting twice as much on them, and 10 people lined up, maybe $250,000 per person for those 10 people. So you have a lot of money being spent per person here, and this is the longevity, expected lifespan. Japan is out here at 83 years. America's down here at 77 years and getting shorter. Last few years is the first time we've actually measured life expectancy to go shorter. And it's simply not working. In 1961, our total gross expenditure for medical care in the United States was about 6% of our GNP. Now it's running 20, 22, 25 maybe. Some people say even higher. So it's an industry. And industries tend to like to support their continued existence and protection. If you're making a lot of money in something, you wouldn't want it to go away. You want to encourage it to continue to be what it is. Why do you think lap bands go on the way up? My wife tells a story about somebody she knew that had to gain 30 weight for the insurance company to pay for their lap band surgery. Because she didn't qualify the weight she was at, so she had to get fat. That's the kind of insane inverse concept here in terms of healthcare. Profitability, encouragement for health, it's just not there. It's just madness. So we've got something that's really not working and it's broken. Autism, this is an old chart. It should be 1 in 54 now in terms of the numbers of how many children live births, you see autism within 3 or 4 years. It's interesting that within the Amish community, it's 1 in 15,000. Now, I'm not here to say the Amish are perfect because they're not. They got all kinds of issues. But the problem is, they don't have the same core issues when it comes to autism and diabetes and obesity that the general population has. And I'm not here to tell you what causes autism because I don't think anybody really knows for sure. But I can tell you one thing I know for sure, and I think everybody agree on, is let's look at the risks in the waste baskets that sit on the Amish community versus the community as a whole downtown USA. The Amish, very few vaccinate their children, if any. They don't go to the doctor and give them a bunch of antibiotics. They eat out of their gardens. No cell phones. They all drink raw milk, or many of them do. They report that they do. They're very close to animals. They're on the farm. They run around barefooted. That's the Amish. Okay? Now, and they work hard too. Physically very robust, work hard. The general community out there vaccinating their kids 167 vaccinations from 0 to 18 years of age. Antibiotics for every sniffle, when sniffles aren't an indication for antibiotics. We're not supposed to take antibiotics for sniffles. That's a virus. Antibiotics kill off the good bacteria in your gut, destroying immunity, put you in a world of hurt. Sterilized foods. No source of probiotic bacteria to reseed the intestine's well-being in terms of biodiversity. Antibiotics, vaccinations, sedentary lifestyles, cell phones in everybody's ears, no hard work going on, no exercise in school. That's just the beginning. No raw milk, pasteurized, irradiated, sterilized, boxed. Preservatives in foods are actually intended to keep that food on a shelf longer, never intended to be in your gut for a short period of time, which it needs to break down quickly to be digested. Foods are manufactured and designed for long shelf life and low liability, not digestibility and short shelf life in your gut. Your gut's not a shelf. So that's the two risk baskets, and I'll leave it up to you as to if they make sense or not and how that whole fits together. And they all point to gut flora, gut food, gut. That's where this is at. And those children that have autism have a screwed up gut, really, really bad. They're so screwed up they can't even drink raw milk. They have a hard time with it because of the digestibility and the assimilation of casein, which causes casomorphine and makes them go crazy like they're on opium. So their gut is really a mess. So that is a very interesting little polarity there, looking at those two groups of people. Asthma is killing 4,000 kids a year. 1 in 4 kids in Fresno County has an asthma diagnosis. Colitis, that's kind of a condition of the gut. It's raging out of control up here. Diabetes, the whole metabolic syndrome, bad news going through the roof. So, what is your immune system? Well, it's interesting. If you look at your immune system, it's a very, very, very complex system in your body. But let's break it down to something super simple. If this is the inside of your gut, and these are the villi, inside of your gut here are foods we eat. And in those foods, you've got an uncounted quadrillions of bacteria, biodiverse colonies of bacteria, that live in that food and colonize along the narrow lining of the internal part of your intestines here. That bacteria out here actually has DNA information in each of the bacterial cells. And those bacterial cells' DNA communicate with our cells as human bodies. And we know this from the Human Genome Project, Dr. Bonnie Basler's work at MIT. So this very complex system of the bacteria inside of the intestinal tract actually directing the order of all this crazy stuff we don't understand, the killer T cell complexes, all these interesting kinds of systems that are working to make and regulate our body's efforts, are regulated by bacterial DNA that tell the mast cells what to do and the rest of these cells what to do from the genetics of the bacteria itself. Pretty interesting stuff. So bacteria, 80% of the time, 80% of at minimum, maybe it's much more, actually run our immune system and control it and make it function properly. This is just the edge of science. We really don't understand this very well. We've just begun to appreciate this. So, cross-talking. What is that? That means one bacteria talking to another. That means, hey guy, what you doing? Do this. That means talking about this kind of stuff. This rainforest within, this very complex villi system of these little houses, these little places where colonization of bacteria occurs, is literally the basis of our immune system. This gal here is really worthy. If you're going to make a note, this is one you've got to watch. I wish I could go live right now and do it. But Dr. Bonnie Basler, just put in a little TED Talk, Bonnie Basler, MIT, How Bacteria Talk. 12 minutes will change your life. 12 minutes will change your life. Because it talks about some very, very powerful things. Quorum sensing. What the hell is quorum sensing? Well, you can't have a meeting and agree on anything until you have a quorum, right? That's the democratic way you do things. Well, believe it or not, bacteria are very democratic. They believe in the majority rules. And the minority loses. So, they discovered a very interesting thing in some jellyfish off the coast of Hawaii. The Vibrio fischii bacteria that reside in the jellyfish gut rise and fall in their bacteria counts on a daily basis. Is that interesting? And you know what these bacteria do? What's your name? You are very smart sitting in the front row. That's really good. These bacteria decide to do things when their bacteria counts become high enough to do things. And they don't do it until they all get a quorum big enough to decide to do it. So what do they think they do? At a point during the day, when their bacteria counts rise to a high enough level, they all quorum sense, which is cross-communicate, and they say, okay guys, it's time, we're big, bad enough, strong enough, we're all going to start to bioluminesce. They create light. But until that point, they do not do that. They only do it when they rise to that point where they have enough bacteria, the Vibrio fischii bacteria actually agree to do something together. And that same kind of system works, the quorum sensing system, works in the gut with good and bad bacteria. When you have tremendous numbers of good bacteria, they all decide to do good things together. Like, let's go kick that bad bacteria's butt. Keep them out here. Or, let's say you take an antibiotic and you kill all your good stuff, and only the bad ones are around. They say, let's go do something really nasty and ugly. And that's what happens too. So it's a balance of good and bad, and it's our jobs as human beings thinking, let's eat good bacteria so we can always be dominating bad bacteria. And let's make sure our immune systems are very, very much predominantly oppressing bad bacteria to be good bacteria alive. Because there's bad bacteria in all of us. It doesn't matter whether they're flourishing or not. So this whole quorum sensing thing was discovered just a few years ago at MIT to figure out how the heck bacteria actually work together to do anything of any reasonable sense. And they only have a little piece of DNA, and they're just one cell. So boy, are they powerful when they team up and they become literally 95% of the genetics and DNA in our bodies. So you're not really humans. You're a bacterial sapiens. You laugh, but that's bacterial laughing. Because here is the number of cells, here's the genetics of the human versus the whole. And it's literally, it's a funny thing, but it's not. If you look at the science of it all and understanding how bacterial DNA and human DNA, they couldn't find the human genome until they added the bacteria in our body into the genome. Then they could figure out how it worked. So this is the MIT. Wow, yeah, make your hair stand on end. Woo, make your bacteria stand up and go, wow. We are of. You know, when scientists go to Mars and look for life, they don't look for monkeys. They look for bacteria. The formation of life is bacterial. And this is from our perspective in 2012. They'll look back at me and say, well, that joker thought the world was flat. You know? We'll know even more later. But the bottom line is, our best understanding right now is the world is round. We're in a solar system. We have bacteria here, we have warmth here, we have sun here, we have water here, we have souls and spirits and life and all this kind of stuff. And this biosphere we call Earth is the only place we figured out where to live. We can't go someplace else. And this living, breathing organism is based in bacteria working and functioning together. When we die, bacteria eat us with their lunch. So, respect bacteria, because they are you. They will be the key to your longevity. They will be the key to your health, your death, everything about you. Bacteria drives it. So, we are bacteria sapiens, and literally, when you figure this out, then you go, whoa, I need some good bacteria. Where is it? And you find it at a farmer's market. You find it in the backyard garden. You find it at a reliable natural food source, not lying to you. You find it at a farmer's, a place where a farm actually produces organic food or natural food. Somebody you trust that's not cheating you. That's where you find these foods, and that is not an easy task. That is not what you find at 7-Eleven. That's not what you find at Vons. Look at the ingredient list and all these things you can't understand with the ingredient list. You look at cheese, it's like the last 3 things are antibiotics. What? So preservatives, all these different processes that they put in your food. And for instance, a great example of that is almonds. You go down to the local natural food store and you buy raw almonds. Wow, I'm going to eat raw almonds. Only to find out that later that in California, mandated that all almonds are pasteurized, but you can call them raw. Well, I tell you what, I don't know how people would feel if I pasteurized my milk and called it raw. There'd be a lot of lactose intolerance, wouldn't there? Well, that's just one example of raw versus the lie of being raw. The same thing goes on for cheeses. You can make a pasteurized cheese and call it raw. In other words, if you've got pasteurization at 160 degrees and raw is 159, or raw can actually be 161 if you don't have a pasteurizer's license. Because the law says you have to be a certified pasteurizer and everything else to actually be effectively pasteurized. But yeah, you can make raw cheeses and take the dirtiest milk out there and bring it into your plant and kill it and put cultures in it and call it raw because it wasn't technically pasteurized. So there's a lot of lies in our food. We have to be very cautious about what we eat because we don't know what's live and what's dead because we're being lied to all the time by marketing experts that are just telling us this food's wonderful, eat it, because they're trying to make money. So you have to get to know your farmer, get to know your food. And that's a lost paradigm. There's so many people making money between the farmer and the consumer. The farmer's cheated of all the economics and a brand and a name and a recognition that he's a phenomenal person working his butt off for nothing. And the consumer's cheated of all the nutrition. And who's making all the money? Dean's Food right in the middle. Dean's Food's making all the money. Multi-billion-dollar, huge financial successes. Cheating the money from the farmer and the nutrition from the consumer. And the consumer and the farmer are completely disconnected. So, how do you battle back to the farmer? That's why I loved hugging you so much. Because that's that communication. There's nobody standing between Annie and I get to nourish her and she gets to nourish me, and we stand together, and I'm responsible totally, and she's appreciative totally. And we both win. That's the America I want to live in. That's the America that should be thriving and doing well. That's where you can't bring it in from China and fake it. You know? That's the real building of America from American soil. That's the real answer to this non-sustainable medical madness we've got going on. Doctors wouldn't like it. Maybe the real ones that actually use food to heal wouldn't like it. What's the Hippocratic statement? Let food be your medicine and medicine be your food and do no harm. That's Hippocrates 2,400 years ago in ancient Greece talking about medicine. I don't know any doctor who even knows that quote. So bottom line is, we become very passionate when we look at raw milk because it's one of those rare sources of biodiversity and bacteria, and it's delicious. So, that said, let's go on. There's some great studies I want to share with you here about diabetes. Mice exposed to common stomach bacteria were protected against the development of type 1 diabetes. When the mice that had those bacteria removed from their body all got type 1 diabetes. Isn't that the American experience with 1 in 3 kids being born today going to have diabetes in their life? We've taken the bacteria out of our gut, and therefore autoimmune diseases are attacking the islets of Langerhans and causing diabetes and deprivation of insulin in our bodies. Pretty interesting. We know about this. This is 4 years ago. Yale University proved it. This guy, oh, this is interesting. You ever seen this guy? Well, you'd want to see him if you had C. diff. Clostridium difficile is a classic example of what happens when you take too many antibiotics in a hospital setting and you got superbugs around you and in you because C. diff's in your body too. Clostridium difficile is one of those bacteria that is one of the lesser bacteria that generally doesn't get the quorum sense because it's constantly being suppressed by the good bacteria in your gut. But when you're in the ICU and you've taken every antibiotic known to man, experimental bacteria, you've killed off the bacteria in your gut, this one's antibiotic resistant. And it loves an environment that's a vacuum with no other competition. So C. diff comes along and kills 32% of the people that get it. They can't treat it with anything. You know what the treatment is? Fecal transplants from a spouse. Yeah, you get a bunch of crap from your husband. It's a loving gift. Give your wife a bunch of crap, you close your ears. And the husband gives the wife, through a transfer, through NG2, basically a bunch of mixed up feces into her lower GI, and she's fine in 2 days. And she's going to die in the ICU. What does that tell you about good information from the genetic code of the gut bacteria going into a wife that's going to die, or a husband, either way? Why do they use wives and husbands? They don't go out and find genetic serotypes, blood sample stuff. They go between wife and husband because wife and husbands share bacteria. They commune together. They eat together. They kiss and hug together. They do all kinds of stuff together. They eat the same kind of food. They share the same kind of bacteria in their gut together. That's why they can take the crap from one person and give the other as a gift of life. And that is shocking to find that 92% of people that get this treatment survive and do well, when they literally have 32% death from not getting this. This is advanced medical treatment. So these are huge secrets that nobody wants to hear about, but wow, gut flora matters. There's backside to antibiotics. And this is pretty powerful, because this was a doctor that was saving tremendous numbers of lives of people who actually suffer from Clostridium difficile, which kills 32% of people that suffer from it. Pretty powerful stuff. Here is the internal gut lining of a Crohn's patient. And you can kind of see it. This is a normal patient here. But you can see the intestinal lining of a Crohn's patient. Does that look pretty good? What's wrong with that? What's it look like? What do you think? What's your name? What? Faith. I have faith. Faith, what a great name. It's all blistery and it's infected. It's pussy. There's no little villi left. The entire texture of that is just wrong. It's just inflamed. That gut is in real trouble, and that's the Crohn's disease infected patient looking like that. This area here is smooth with little villi, billions and billions and billions of little villi in those walls that are actually working properly. It's not inflamed. It's actually working as a very good little tissue wall to allow the correct kinds of processes to take place there, and that's the seat of your immune system. So this is a real mess here in terms of what's going on, and Crohn's right now is a crisis in America. The most important study you can do is the one you do in your body, and that's really important because there's so many people now that say, oh, where's the science, where's the science? Well, there's great science, but I tell you what, most of it's coming out of Europe. The most important study you can do is actually the studies that you do in your own body, because there's no side effect from drinking raw milk or eating whole food nutrition to find out if you yourself can take care of root canal problems, whether you can take care of Crohn's disease patient problems. All these things can be resolved by a good diet. I'll tell you a quick short story. A guy by the name of Kameli. He's a Maasai warrior from Kenya, black guy, black as black gets. Ran the marathon when he was a teenager. Very, very healthy. Grew up. If he had not had a cow to set the teat on directly in his mouth when he was a child, he would have died. Okay? An orphan child. Became a friend of mine about 6 years ago. He, through a whole series of events, came to America, went to Oregon State University, then went on to Stanford University and got his master's degree in biology. Weird set of circumstances, but nonetheless. During that process, the story gets longer, but he went from eating a whole food nutrition with eating all kinds of weird things like raw blood and raw milk and insects and yams and all kinds of earth stuff and playing with manure and being very connected to the soil, come to the United States where he drank pasteurized milk, skim milk, soy milk, no milk, antibiotics when he got sick, to actually getting a heck of a case of Crohn's disease in less than 7 years. And that's going from Weston A. Price, Dr. Pottenger, these kinds of studies. The archives are just behind us here, 20 feet. Studying them in the Maasai in Kenya in the 1920s and 30s. Actually happening in 1990 and seeing full circle. Now, Camelli was sitting in a classroom at Stanford University in front of Dr. Chris Gardner, who's one of the world's leading researchers in nutrition. And here he is going to the bathroom every 10 minutes with his Crohn's disease. Really in bad shape. Dr. Gardner sent him down to the clinic and he said, you're going to have 12 feet of your intestines removed because you've got this horrible, raging Crohn's disease. Well, I got to know this guy through a film producer, and the long story short was we put him on raw milk, half gallon a day, and a whole food diet. And the quote from Camelli was, I'll live in the United States, but I'm going to eat in Kenya. And he said, you eat and you eat and you eat, but you're starving. And he started eating as much as he could, just like he did back in Kenya. Raw milk, bananas, whole food nutrition, farmers markets. And within a year, his Crohn's was completely in remission. And now, he's normal as you and I. He's back running marathons without any surgery. And guess who got to see that? Dr. Chris Gardner, Stanford University. That's why I got invited to talk to Stanford medical students to get that deer in the headlights look out of their eyes about what nutrition was about. Hey, wake up, guys. This guy did not get a surgery at your Stanford University. He got raw milk from the dairy. So who's the healer? I kind of wake them up a little bit. It was very interesting to see a couple hundred medical students just go, what? I never heard nothing like this. This is weird. But nonetheless, shockingly true. Dr. Jordan Rubin, Maker's Diet, same experience. In fact, he was drinking raw milk here in San Diego in the 1990s and cured himself with a case of Crohn's that he thought he was going to die from. So very interesting to see real-life experiences here. So these are, the most important studies are the ones that come from inside of your body that you do yourself because you're going to be like everybody. Just do it yourself and trust yourself. So, lactose intolerance is affecting about 30% of the population right now, but very, very few people have lactose intolerance with raw milk. So we're renaming that pasteurization intolerance. And it's very interesting to see that it's almost as if the processing industry has blamed everybody for their faults, perceived faults, instead of their fault in their product, in the efficiency of the product. And it really is. I mean, you're too black to drink pasteurized milk. You're too Asian. You're too American Indian. You're too this, you're too that. You've got this, that, and the other. They paid for a lot of studies to prove something, when in fact, you know what? The real study, drink it and see. And most people, not a problem at all. They can drink raw milk. They're all Maasai, they're black, they drink raw milk, no problem at all. It's pasteurized milk they have a problem with. Mongolians, they're as Asian as you get. They drink raw milk all day long and out in Mongolia. The American Indians I know can drink raw milk. It just takes them a little while to accommodate, but nonetheless, if you look back in the histories of when they would kill a buffalo, they'd go right for the udder and get the clotted casein and the cheese-like material out of the udder as a delicacy. So it's very interesting to see the truth of it all come out. The most allergenic food in America, guess what it is? Anybody got a smartphone? Steve Jobs gave us a great gift, by the way. If you were to Google the most allergenic food in America, FDA, it would come up and it would say milk. It wouldn't say pasteurized milk. They don't have the guts to say that. They wouldn't want to put down their processing friends. But the bottom line is pasteurized milk is the #1 allergenic food in America. Raw milk stabilizes mast cells and actually keeps allergies from occurring. It's a great treatment for allergies and asthma. So it's kind of interesting, we're in piece here, antibiotics and probiotics, how that all works. But pasteurized milk is the most allergenic food in America. And the reason? Well, you've got milk from 50 different dairies. And let's just, on a great day, imagine a perfect world where all those dairies are doing just a great job except for one. They're just doing the capos are doing a fantastic job. No antibiotics, they're letting the cows out in pasture a little bit. Everything's clean and scrubbed up and great. And 49 of those dairies are sending them up to the big creamery and just wonderful. But one's just screwing it up and they're sending in the bad stuff. That's not reality. They all screw it up now. But I'm just giving them the benefit of the doubt, all right? The bottom line is all that milk comes into a central milk tank. The bacteria counts aren't even tested because they're so high. Yeah, oh my goodness. The bacteria counts are so high, good, bad, and ugly bacteria, good ones, yogurt-like bacteria, bad bacteria, E. coli, salmonella, doesn't matter. 50 dairies, you can just imagine what's in that milk tank. No problem. Remember, they only shut them down for 3 hours. They got all the answers here. Pasteurize the hell out of it. Now, that doesn't mean one time at 160 degrees. That may mean 3 or 4 times because they got to get down. They got to get 5-log kill to kill all that stuff off for two reasons. #1, liability. #2, shelf life. But what happens in the pasteurization process? You have a living bacterial cell, that goes through a high temperature heat process. That bacterial cell, the way you kill it is called lysing. It breaks it open. So the internal cell contents is no longer in the inside where it's not recognized by your body. It's now all over the place. And when it's all over your place, those internal cell contents, which are supposed to be inside a cell, trigger a really big mast cell degradation and histamine response in your body. So it's treated like a waste product. You have all this mucus produced in it. Cough it up, hack it up. And some people, it frank asthma attack straight up. Or you can have anaphylactic shock and call 911 for an epi shot, and intubation, and CPR, and death. In fact, there's been 7 children killed in the United States alone since 1998 with allergies to pasteurized milk. And I'll get into that in a second. That was the next slide I screwed up. So why are we so depressed? I mentioned this already, but the standard American diet, pasteurization, antibiotics, sterile environments, synthetic foods, preservatives, is what we eat in the standard American diet as a general rule. I don't think people in this room eat that way. You guys are enlightened. But nonetheless, this is where America is going. In fact, I was just nauseated to hear a conversation from the president of Beans Foods about how they love their soy milk because they didn't have to deal with the dairymen anymore. Pretty interesting. Is that? The dairymen are getting paid like dirt right now for their milk. They're getting $15 to $16 a hundredweight. 17 to 20 is break even. You see dairymen just leaving the market left and right and just bulldozing dairies because they can't survive anymore. So, how do we rebuild our immune system? Well, I'll tell you what, you don't have to drink raw milk. The Eskimos never did. But what do they eat? Fermented raw fish. You ever had fermented raw fish? Ooh, yum. Wait, Faith, what do you think? Fermented raw fish. Rotten fish. Ooh, that's going to smell. Ceviche. Ceviche. Well, it's not ceviche. It's not ceviche. It's a world and a class beyond. I love ceviche. Fermented rotten fish, I think it's an acquired taste, but it's probably delicious in its own right. But the bottom line is, you can get the same things found in raw milk. Good bacteria, fermented, good fats, fish oil fats, mineralization, all those kinds of things you can find in raw fish, you find in raw milk. You find good bacteria, you find good enzymes, you find good minerals, and good fats from grass-fed sources. So those that didn't drink raw milk ate fish from the origins of the sea. And that was kind of where different cultures around the world found their origins of these good fats and these enzymes and good bacteria. And they would ferment these fish in order to have these kinds of bacterial counts get high. So you eat real unprocessed foods. Processors don't like that because they like to make money on processing. Enzyme rich. You don't cook it so much. If you cook some, you don't cook the entire plate. You cook part of your plate. So you actually have some living food on your plate. Organic, local, grass-fed with good fats, fermented foods. And you know what? Living in a sterile environment, let yourself be exposed to animals. Get out in nature and allow yourself to come in contact with things other than a sterile environment. When you live in a bubble, you're going to be in trouble. And then the Weston A. Price, GAPS Diet, Price-Pottenger Foundation, those types of educational models really work. And there's the kind of food you eat in order to supply these grass-fed, natural, unprocessed, enzyme-rich, biodiverse foods that nourish our immune system. And guess what? You don't have to go to the doctor as much anymore, if ever. So, you get off that 7 aircraft crashing every day. Now I gotta take that flight. So we've really had a development of our diets for the shelf, not the gut, or that's exactly right. Antibiotics for the sniffle, sterilized foods, preserved foods, and superbugs killing 20,000 people a year. I did a presentation in Ramona a few weeks ago, and at that presentation, a presentation was made by a clinical biologist who worked at a hospital. Now, you've got an organic raw milk dairyman over here, and you got, what's her name? Fraser? Holly Fraser. She worked at a hospital. She was a clinical biologist. Her job was to look at petri dishes all day long and determine which antibiotic to give a patient. As the doctor's saying, this patient's dying, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. Culture the bad bugs so I know which bacteria to kill, which antibiotic to kill. Her conclusion is, drink raw milk as much as you can. And she does herself. Because she said, the immunity is all in the gut. And she said, these superbugs coming in my petri trays aren't dying from nothing. There are no antibiotics to kill them. And she said, C. diff. I say that 3 times. She said that C. diff was a lesser evil. There's bad stuff that makes C. diff look like no big deal. So here's Holly Fraser doing an hour presentation, and Mark McAfee following up talking about these kinds of things, and we're actually on the same thing together. And this is a clinical biologist from an advanced health center right here in San Diego, talking about how the doctors are saying, hit them with everything, bring out all the soldiers, kill them all. And she's saying, no, please, narrow spectrum, just kill this, because we don't want to annihilate the rest of the immune system and cause C. diff and kill the patient. And they kill patients all day long. Because they're so used to just use a Zithro pack, kill it all, annihilate. Don't have any appreciation for the fact that that's the same bacteria that's going to save their life. Any appreciation for the inner ecosystem. And here's a clinical biologist going, wow, look what we're doing to ourselves. She finds herself in arguments with doctors saying, please, I pray to God, don't give this to the patient because you're going to kill the patient, and they end up dead. It's just amazing. So we've had 100 years without milk in the United States. We've got all kinds of patchwork puzzle here of different regulations. In California, we have legal raw milk. It's very hard to do. It's widely available. It's extremely hard to do. We have raw milk back in Pennsylvania that's legal. We've got the state of Washington, Arizona, and a few states over here. Only 8 states allow the retail sale of raw milk. 8 states. The balance, 8 states. Yeah, and it's federally, the federal government wants no raw milk available anywhere. In fact, you can't take raw milk from California to Nevada. That's actually a federal crime. I've been sued, I know. I was shipping it to Arizona for many, 3 years. Until there was a sting operation that spent, I don't know how many, hundreds of thousands of dollars to figure it out. But the fact that I was actually shipping raw milk across state lines as pet food and being consumed by humans. That sting operation was very interesting. Somebody called from Seattle and said, hey, I want raw milk for my dog. I said, great, we'll ship it right to you. That's legal, you can do that. But you know what? My sister lives in California and she loves raw milk for her kids. Can I give it to my kids too? And our girl in front office who gives our raw milk to her kids said, sure. Bingo, you're dead. So that was on recording. We immediately said, yeah, we're guilty as charged. How do we plead out of this thing? And we finally got out of it without getting any ugly stuff. But the bottom line is, the FDA is after raw milk because it is after processors. And the FDA and processors are one and the same. Anybody seen the movie Food Inc.? Tells the story. Revolving door between processing industry and the guys that sit at the boards at FDA that regulate them, actually facilitate them, thank you. The bottom line is, we have a real challenge in America because of 50 different laws, 50 different states, consumers are fried, farmers are going bankrupt, profits is a profit, it's a disaster. It's kind of sorting itself out. Dollar voting is just telling the truth. In America, people would take a dollar out and say, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do this. And after a while, the guys that you choose not to do just fall apart and go away. And the ones you support continue to thrive. So dollar voting is actually sorting this whole thing out. It's going to take a while, but it's going to be real ugly during that process. And there's a lot of people really uniting in this process of the upheaval, the activism. Anybody know who this guy is?
Yeah.
Who?
Joel Salatin.
Joel Salatin, absolutely. Hero extraordinaire, Polyface Farms. He is very much an advocate for not only raw milk, but all unprocessed foods. And has a wonderful business model back in his state where he actually produces all kinds of food there and sells it to local citizens. And he's written a bunch of books. And he's a hero of mine. This is a rally in front of the FDA back in Maryland where we had raw milk and cookie day in front of the FDA. Because in Maryland, you can't get raw milk, and they're bringing raw milk across state lines to moms in Maryland from Pennsylvania. And of course, we were putting it right in their face. That, hey, listen, what are you going to do, arrest a mom? And there were hundreds of moms there. And of course, they didn't arrest moms. They came out that day with a big press release that said, we're not going to prosecute moms for bringing raw milk across state lines anymore. We're just going to prosecute their dairy producers. So the moms come across the state line, they go bust the dairymen, but the moms can do it. So it's selective enforcement just to harass, because it's sacrilegious to arrest a mom. They're dollar voters, upset the dads. It's going to cause a real unrest with the fact that moms are supposed to pray to the FDA, right? When you upset the moms, you upset everything. They're sacred. They push the cart, they have babies, they nurse, they produce raw milk themselves. I mean, you don't mess with moms. And the FDA let the moms off the hook, but went after the dairymen. And that's what the current state of affairs is right now in the United States, is massive oppression of raw milk in areas across the United States by the FDA and local administrations and regulations. In California, not quite that much, but you can kind of see in the last few days what's going on with us. Yes, ma'am? Joel Salatin, Polyface Farms. Yep, great guy. So safety is a real interesting issue here because they're always pleading about safety, saying it's not safe, it's not safe, it's not safe. And it's really a smokescreen. Because the definition of safe is described according to one belief concept. I don't think that safe things cause death. I really don't. I don't think safe things depress the immune system. I don't think safe things cause 32% C. diff. I think safe things prevent those things. So you actually look at this. What food causes death when produced perfectly? And guess what? These are the 7 kids that died from drinking pasteurized milk that were healthy before they drank pasteurized milk. They died. This is the allergy support group data. So it's verified, in fact, pasteurized milk is killing kids, quite a few of them, in terms of allergies, but no raw milk deaths at all from either that or being poisoned at all in the last 37 years. There's been either 17 or 77 deaths from pasteurized milk, depending on what data you believe. And they basically did not put the Jalisco cheese incident, which caused 50 deaths all by itself, in the database because it looked too ugly. They just put 17 in there. The last 3 deaths were in Massachusetts in 2007. But these weren't even counted in that. So you got about 100 deaths. And even that many deaths over 37 years isn't that many when you got 330 million people. Yeah, but there's still 0 deaths from raw milk. But they always say, we're killer food. You got a question, sir?
I'm sorry, I didn't know the rules. I guess we're supposed to wait.
I guess that's the idea. Save your question.
What was the mechanism?
The mechanism
that killed these people?
allergies. Mast cell destruction, histamine response, anaphylactic shock.
Allergies to...
Pasteurized milk. And we talked about the bacteria being broken open, the internal cell contents going all over the place.
Okay.
Mast cells degrade, histamines go crazy, and if you're susceptible, histamines respond, cause bronchospasm, airways off, can't call 911 enough, paramedics can't get their epinephrine, open it up, intubation, dead kid. 4 minutes. I used to do it. I was a paramedic for 17 years. I know kids that died in my ambulance, or tried to save them.
It's a reaction to all of the dead bacteria.
Precisely. The immune response is mast cells break open, histamines go crazy, reaction. You get bronchial swelling, bronchial edema. You get peripheral vasodilation, which drops your blood pressure, and you get this completely decompensated shock. You have too little blood in too big of a space. You have no blood pressure, and you have a sealed off airway. The kid dies. So that's very much a crisis. Pasteurized milk. Let's look at the safety here. What is safety here? Well, you got pasteurized milk, 7 deaths from pasteurized milk, allergies, 422,000 illnesses from pasteurized dairy, 74 deaths. And raw milk over here, yeah, you've had a couple of illnesses, absolutely. No deaths. And you know what? This is Cornell data. So really this idea about raw milk being so dangerous is actually 120-year-old information from the 1880s, not any time recently at all. And they always harken back, oh yeah, pasteurization was the greatest thing in the world. Yeah, in 1901, in certain circumstances, and we'll talk about that. So it's very interesting. So redefining safe food, what is safe? The FDA will come and plead to you that safe is sterile. Safe is pasteurized. Hormones, GMO, cloned, antibiotics, long shelf life, CAPO, an confinement animal feeding operation with 10,000 cows in a small space. Dead allergenic and the most allergenic food in America. That is safe according to the FDA. Unsafe is a traditional diet. Living food, grass-fed, whole foods, good fats, nutrient-dense, enzyme-rich, all these kinds of things local. That's unsafe. It's becoming a real joke. People are aware of this, and they're just getting off this whole thing quickly because it's so untrue. It doesn't work. And when something doesn't work, the lie doesn't perpetuate very well. And so that's what's happening with the internet, because the internet is actually telling the truth very rapidly. And you can't cover the lie anymore. Before, when people didn't communicate very well, you couldn't tell your story. Now the story is evolving, and it's just blowing up the paradigm in terms of what truth is concerned. Here's an interesting little cartoon from 1911, and I agree. There was a real problem with dirty milk from filthy dairies and dairy conditions. Remember the ecosystem we had, a clean, green environment versus the filthy environment? You had a dairy that was being fed distillers grains. The cows were being fed distillers grains, which cows aren't supposed to eat, by the way. They're supposed to eat grasses, sunshine-driven things. Very little grain you're feeding. You got cows in filthy conditions. You got hobos over here licking the tops of the cans in the sunshine. It's all hot. And you got a filthy condition here where it's hot, grimy in a store. And over here you got a sick baby in a filthy condition. And you got a dead baby. That's the story in 1911. You had 40 to 50% of people that drank this swill milk died. It was a crisis. It was a real honest-to-goodness crisis. You had typhoid fever, tuberculosis, brucellosis. You had no flushing toilets. You had no washing pans. You had no stainless steel, no rubber, no sanitizers, no clean water. Horses running around all over the place. It was a real crisis. But then you had clean, certified raw milk that started in 1893 with Mr. Coit and Dr. Coit. You had clean milking of the cows, rapid chilling, inspected, stored in a cold environment so that it would be good quality, healthy babies, and babies that were young babies. And you had babies who were sick, being fed, and you ended up with a healthy baby, seeing the doctor actually recommending raw milk as a way to keep your baby healthy. The 2 kinds of raw milk in America have been around for a long, long time. That's the story in 1911. But it's interesting to note that this milk lived until about 1945. Did pretty well. In 1945, what happened? We had World War II. The Industrial Revolution, antibiotics were a miracle cure for anything. I mean, a soldier got shot, he had an infection, you give antibiotics, he walked away, he lived and went home. That was a miracle thing. We thought we ran the world. We disregarded nature. We didn't think of God's plan. We didn't think of biodiversity. We didn't think of the world as a holistic living organism. DDT was sprayed on things. What do you know? Bugs didn't grow anymore. We thought we could run the world. We put DDT on us. DDT was actually prescribed as good for your skin, and smoking was supposed to be good for asthma in 1945. That's how it was advertised. Some of the advertisers were outrageous. That was where we were in 1945. So we thought, why worry about dirty milk? Just pasteurize it. Technical answer. We didn't have to worry about quality. Farm boys were out fighting somebody in some World War. We didn't have any money. So just answer the question by cheap food, just pasteurize it. Just kill everything and extend shelf life and don't worry about it. Well, that ended up really coming back to hurt people later, as we've seen now with allergies and other problems. And as this whole pasteurization paradigm has evolved, there's been advertising to go with it. And this advertising has included these seals, which we see around California now. And this actual seal was developed in New Zealand. It was the low bid on the advertising budget. And they spent their several $1 million in New Zealand. And these cows actually don't have any feet. They've actually been clipped and pasted onto this thing electronically to create this backdrop. And that's the real deal that's actually sold in California. But that's actually my neighbor down the street. So when your food starts in this kind of environment and ends up being advertised in this kind of environment, you got a real problem. You're lying to consumers and you're lying to the cow. And you're creating an environment where you have the wrong kind of bacteria growing. And you don't have any opportunity for that cow to get out and actually do some things in a natural kind of environment. This is a neighbor of mine. This is considered a model dairy, phenomenally well run, very efficient. The big operation is not a blade of grass anywhere near the cows. In fact, the grass is out here. It's cut right in the middle and brought into the cows. A lot of grain, 3 or 4 times a day being milked, no pastures, manure lakes back here, which can damage underground water. Sometimes it doesn't. If they have liners, which are very expensive, it doesn't, but it can. A lot of silage of corn, antibiotics, GMO, cloned, hormones, 10,000 cows, commingled together with everybody else's milk. That's the conventional system, all about conditions here. What are these kind of conditions? It's not a living system at all. Milk starts out the capo, mini capos, no pastures, grain-fed, all these things happening here. It's then commingled together in trucks, taken to a pasteurization plant. This truck here, they measure the bacteria count inside the dairy in the milk tank, transport tank. They measure it there. That's the only measurement. They don't measure it later here. So it starts out at very high levels. I have to be less than 10 coliforms. If you look at our website and Facebook, we talk about these bacteria counts about the recall. I have to be less than 10 coliforms in the finished product. My coliform counts are 3 right now. This is 750 before it leaves the farm, before it gets entered into the big common milk tank at the creamery. Now these aren't pathogenic bacteria, but they are indicators of sanitation. So it's not uncommon to have coliforms so high you can't even count them. They're off the lab limits. When the milk actually gets to the pasteurization plant, they can't count the coliforms. It's just all filled with coliforms. But you know what? That's okay. That's the deal. Pathogens present, doesn't matter. They're going to pasteurize. Pasteurize multiple times to make sure those pathogens are destroyed. And guess how many times they test for pathogens after the pasteurizer? Show of hands. 5, 6, 1. 0. You win. 0. They don't have to, but they kill them all. Thank you. The assumption is that, in fact, you killed them all. In fact, the inspector that I talked to this morning, in all solemn seriousness, and no joke about this, had very good reasons why you would not test for a pathogen after the pasteurizer. Very good reason. 1, testing's not perfect. You probably aren't going to find it. Number 2, if you found it, you have to do something about it. That would be terrible for a brand, wouldn't it? It really would. They actually rely on your immune system to kill any bugs that get by, and that's why you do see illnesses that come through, because they do the very best they can to kill that thing. But I tell you what, sometimes it's alive, and they don't want to know that it did, because if they did, they'd have a responsibility to do something about it. And right now, you can't turn the pasteurizer up any higher because it burns the milk. They are running into a battleship, and they can't fix Mother Nature because it's fixing them. So it's very interesting. When you're untrue, things come back to bite you right on the rear, and it ain't fun. So that's kind of interesting how that's all going. Then they homogenize, which is the destruction of the butterfat by crushing the butterfat under very high pressure, which makes that a real weird thing. Nobody really knows about that because it may be part of the whole cholesterol problem we've got going on with plaquing. The whole homogenization was destruction of butterfat, so it makes it little pieces instead of the big fat marshmallow that it is. Standardization. You can put anything in there, and if it's made from milk, you don't have to put it in the label. So you can put dried powdered milk in there and not even put it on the label that you did. Milk protein concentrate, which is not even considered to be grass, generally accepted as safe, can be put in there and not even mentioned on the label because it's made from milk protein concentrate. You can put anything made from milk in there, even if it's highly processed, more weird stuff in there. And that's why so many people have problems with this stuff. Ever look at those dairy creamers? You can't even read the last 6 things. It goes on like 40 different propionate, it's like Chinese. That's the kind of stuff that's masquerading as milk product, but in fact it's not. Sterile packaging, no pathogen testing, long shelf life, a lot of lactose intolerance, and it's no longer milk, really, it isn't. So there are 2 kinds of raw milk in America, raw milk for people and raw milk for pasteurization. They do come from 2 different environments. This environment must be true to itself. If you're not true to itself, you will have bad bugs coming from it. Remember the quorum sensing, conditions, environment. Very, very important that you have the right kind of conditions to correctly produce the right kind of food that comes out of the conditions. This is our environment. Anybody coming to Camping with the Cows next week? Yeah, 80. We're having I shouldn't say this because more people want to come. We're sold out, but the bottom line is I'll share with you. We're having a consumer farmer connection weekend next weekend at the dairy, and we're going to have Camping with the Cows weekend. So people are coming up. We've got 200 people coming up with families and stuff to ride their bikes and see the chickens and see the cows and experience Organic Pastures dairy and connect with the farm. And they will become literally the Special Forces battle group for legislative change in the future, because we'll know all their names and numbers, and they will know us and we'll know them, and we will battle forward for change as this market grows. And we'll have a little speech. We're going to have a show, the movie Dirt. We're going to eat. We're going to have fill time at the dairy. So it'll be fun. It'll be kind of the Woodstock of raw milk. But anyway, this is the kind of environment where our cows live in, where you can see it's an entirely different environment. Green, it's solar powered, a lot of sunshine. This is the kind of environment you don't generally see pathogens. You may see them, but they're very rare and they're isolated. They're not just packed solid in there. And there's no antibiotics going on. So you're encouraging a larger immune system in the entire dairy operation, which is a live breathing environment. This kind of environment actually encourages good bacteria and discourages bad bacteria. It's a living ecosystem. And that's what you see every day at Organic Pastures Dairy. You see this kind of environment. That's my son Aaron. What a joker. That's raw milk. That's what Camelli did to survive as a child in the side, was get raw milk from the udder. This is not a sterile place here, but I'll tell you what, we really spend a lot of time and energy to make sure this is clean. But there's still, inside the teat canal, there are bacteria that protect the cow from invasion of pathogens. Those bacteria form the basis of some of the biodiversity you find in raw milk. Raw milk is not sterile. Up inside the udder, it's generally pretty sterile, but there are protected bacteria, colonizing bacteria like Lactobacillus and bifidobacteria and some coliform. They actually have very low levels along, just as every orifice of your body has as well, including your lacrimal ducts, nasal ducts, mouth, everywhere else we're going to talk about. We have protected bacteria in our bodies, cow does too. Those bacteria are colonizing and helping us to do things we need to do in our body and our immune system. Those bacteria actually reflect the environment the cow is in. Green grass, sunshine, biodiversity, those are good bacteria you want in your body. And that's the bacteria that helps you build a good immune system, helps you protect yourself from allergies and all that kind of stuff. So kind of an interesting story there with bacteria and the other. Our milk chain, pretty interesting. Our food chain is quite different than that cable milk chain. Cow, consumer, and the farmer, very connected, nobody in between them. Green pastures all year long, organic, which means no antibiotics, and certified and inspected. We're no longer welfare approved, by the way. We reduced that. I got to get that out of there. We disagreed with the animal welfare approved people because their practices actually killed more of our calves. So we just said, nope, calves come first, heck with that. Never give any antibiotics, hormones, anything like that. And then we have high CLA and low good omega-3s from the grass feeding in the animal. CLA is a very potent anti-cancer antioxidant. And omega-3s, which is the fish oil fats. You find that in grass-fed animals. Then you got probiotic, enzyme-rich, green, clean and green. Bottled on our farm, milk only from our cows, nobody else. We don't buy milk from outside. Low bacteria count, rapidly chilled, delivered direct from the farm. It is delicious, and it is local, and it is directly delivered to you. That's our product. That's a model we'd like to see other farmers emulate across the United States, because it's a sincere product that actually acts like medicine because of what it does to the gut. This is an aerial shot from our dairy. This is where the Camping of the Cows is going to happen. We're going to close down our runway. We're going to have this whole entire quarter mile here all covered with people, and we're going to be out there with the cows. The cows will be over here, and we'll be here, and we're going to eat and have a good time. Our creamery is on the farm. Our dairy is on the farm. No lagoons. It's open for visits, so you can go see for yourself what's going on. My wife is actually the eco-visit queen back there. She's had 400 people come through the dairy in the last 90 days and touring people through to explain their ecosystems, our ecosystems, how they all get together, and the whole testimonial bit, all the science behind that. Again, conditions, growing and alive and cleaning grain. If you think about this for a minute, it's actually quite interesting. If you look at the history of the United States, there wasn't a Conestoga wagon that did not come across this United States without 2 or 3 cows pulled behind with a couple of cows behind it. Because wherever you could find grass, that cow would eat, and the kids wouldn't be going to bed at night without food. And the milk that was old to make into cheese and hold it for the next day. So grass of cows were a communication between the sunshine, which you can't eat. Ever try to eat the sun? It doesn't work. Sunshine creates energy in grass. Cows can eat the grass because they have 4 stomachs. We only have 1. They can convert that grass into energy we can eat. If you get really hungry, you can eat the cow. Okay? So the cows are literally a link between us and the sun to be able to eat as earthlings, bacteria sapiens. And that's what's so cool, because around the world, people have goats, cows, sheep, muskoxen, giraffes, not giraffes, camels, thank you very much. Camels, and they get milk from them, and they eat grass. So it's pretty interesting how if you look at the beginning of our economic world in the United States, it was the stock exchange. That wasn't paper stock. That was livestock. It was traded so much because it had so much value. And 1636, I believe, 1636, yeah, Jamestown. Everybody was starving before the arrival of the first cows. They were able to live after the arrival of the first cows because the Americans weren't following an Indian way of eating. But Americans could have the cows, feed the cows, and wouldn't starve at night. So it's pretty interesting how cows have actually helped America establish itself. We're very important. If you got rid of all the supermarkets around here, you had a little patch of grass, you had no place to go get food. You'd have to hunt for food. Hunting's not easy, and oftentimes it's not successful. But if you had a cow, you wouldn't starve, because the cow would eat the grass, you'd always have milk. And the cow would have a calf every year. You could kill the calf if you had to, male, female, that whole thing with meat. So there's a way to actually continue to eat. It's a very good way for civilization to occur, because you didn't have to wander constantly to try to hunt. You could actually settle down and grow grass that the cows could eat. Or you could go more slowly and actually take your cows and herd them. So there's a way for civilization to settle down instead of having to hunt all the time. Here's some interesting thing to watch how dollar voting is happening. Dollar voting is simply the choices you make as a customer. If you want to take your savings account, go do something in your piggy bank, you're choosing to do something. That thing you choose to do is going to encourage that thing to continue to happen. So, in America, if you look at just a regular plain chart of milk consumption, pasteurized milk, it's going down. It ain't pretty. It's a dead food. But even pasteurized cheese is on the growth. Because guess what? After you pasteurize the cheese, you add bacteria back into it. With enzymes and bacteria. It's actually a living food in its own right. It's actually doing quite well because more people can eat it without lactose intolerance than the dead food up here that has no enzymes and good bacteria. Yogurt's doing really well. So it's kind of interesting to see the dollar voting occurring, and raw milk is on this scale right here because it's a living food, it's digestible. Pretty interesting to see just how dollar voting is going on, in terms of consumer choice. This is scaring the bejesus out of the dairy industry because they can't sell this stuff anymore. Stop working. So it's time to make a big change. I tell you, it's all about the next generation, which is being ignored. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. Dr. Weston A. Price and Potter and all those guys who did this studies. When Dr. Price went around the world, he asked every civilization that he visited, why do you eat the foods you eat? And the answer that every civilization had in their own language was, we're very, very concerned about the next generation. If I was to ask people out on the street here, why did you eat the food you eat today? Well, I'd tell you the answers would be it was fast, it was easy, it was cheap, it was sweet. If it was about faith, being alive and well, or somebody getting fertile and having a baby, that would be kind of a socially inappropriate answer. Kind of like, what are you doing in my business kind of thing. But in these ancient cultures, everybody was worried about the next generation and the health of the next generation's survival and well-being. Because they didn't have modern medicine. They didn't have 911 to call. They didn't have a silver bullet. All they could do was prevent. And that's missing in our whole entire thought in America in terms of the next generation's welfare. And as a result, we're seeing autism. We're seeing diabetes. We're seeing all these calamities in our next generation because we failed to see that prevention is the only way to be fertile and go forward. 1 in 7 couples can't even get pregnant in the United States today. Wow. The differences between raw milk and pasteurized milk are quantum. This was a story that Annie was telling earlier about her son and her teeth. The phosphatase enzyme is directly responsible to the calcium bank, how the osteocytes work. The deposit and withdrawal of calcium in your bones has a lot to do with this enzyme called phosphatase. And if you have osteoporosis or osteopenia, you don't make a lot of that stuff. In fact, you don't make any at all. And as a result, pasteurized milk, the test for pasteurization is called the negative alpha phosphatase test. Because the third most prevalent enzyme in milk, in raw milk, is phosphatase. It was put there for a reason. It was there for a reason. Phosphatase is supposed to be there. It is the reason why Annie's son was able to mineralize the teeth. And it's why people with raw milk have very strong teeth. And that's one of the things that Wesley Price was all about. Was he was a Western trained dentist who found people's dentition, their teeth, their bone structure was excellent if they drank raw milk and ate these fish and did these kinds of things with whole diet with good fats and so on and so forth. So phosphatase is intentionally missing out of pasteurized milk, and it's essential for the absorption of calcium. Lipase is an enzyme for fats. It's destroyed also. Look down here, all these things you would never ever see on the ingredient list on the side of your pasteurized milk bottle. Ever see there. Because all you see is fat, sugar, protein. That's all you see. Maybe a couple of artificial vitamins you put in there. But you don't see these lactase-producing enzymes. All these things here, which are in raw milk, destroyed entirely here in pasteurized milk, which have all these critical functions. Wow, don't you feel cheated? I sure did. Found out about this. Look at all these built-in safety systems. They're not perfect, and they don't work perfectly. But I'll tell you what, they're very, very important because what they do is bind and inhibit bad bugs from growing in the ecosystem called raw milk. Now let's just take a holistic view of raw milk. Every mammal produces raw milk. Human mammals produce raw milk. Breast milk is raw milk. Why would God, why would the Creator, why would evolution ever create a food that would hurt the baby? To quote Mike Schmidt, anybody heard of Mike Schmidt? Wonderful human being. He is a poet. He's a musician. He is a raw milk farmer extraordinaire, political activist. Just went through a huge 30-day fast up in Canada, protesting the fact that in Canada you can't get raw milk. He said raw milk is love. The first given food to the baby would thrive and live from the mother. It was in the mother. It's the first thing that the baby comes in contact with is the nipple of the mother's breast after being delivered. It's love. And it's interesting that all of these things here are destroyed in the pasteurization process, and you don't find it. The infant formula, UHT milk, pasteurized milk, it's literally all gone except for a couple things. All these things are critical to maintaining the safety of raw milk. And that's what you find in Organic Pastures dairy bottle. It's a living organism unto its right in itself. Those systems are not there in pasteurized milk, which goes back really to the dialogue we were talking about between my inspector, Steve McGinnis, and myself. We said, you can no longer we really don't want you to have any of your people eat together anymore. Because it has to do with the fact that it's about killing and destroying and separating and trying to run Mother Nature and destroy and not having these safety systems anymore. Because when you go to a pasteurization plant, when you go into a creamery plant, these systems are gone. Guess what? If you get anything in that pasteurized milk, it goes like crazy. Pasteurized milk doesn't have the inhibitors anymore. So you can't have people working together, being together, socialization, and being a normal community of people, just like a normal colony of bacteria. You can't have a normal community of people. Because in fact, if you get those community together, something's going to blow up and go wrong because all the safety system that Mother Nature put there is dead and gone. So it's pretty interesting biopolitical, social, industrial kind of holistic discussion of the fact that pasteurization here has a lot of things that are completely missing, put there for a reason after a billion years of evolution to function for a particular purpose. And that is the survival of the next generation's first food. Gone. Scientific research is totally confirming this. There's no question about it. They study breast milk ad nauseum. They won't study raw milk from cows, but they'll study breast milk, and that's what they find. And that's the same thing in all mammals. So it's pretty powerful stuff here in terms of what's going on inside the huge things are happening. This young lady, Charlotte, up in Oregon, my wife and I are going to go visit with her on June 10th. June 11th. She's actually producing raw milk up there and doing a really good job. Just two cows. I mean, in Oregon, you can't buy raw milk legally, but you can sell raw milk for 2 cows legally. She's actually just joined the Raw Milk Institute as the voice of the smaller farmer. I'm the voice of the larger farmer, she's the voice of the smaller farmer. We're all advocating for additional resources, additional training to do raw milk well, in concert with nature so we don't have people get sick. And it's interesting that you see MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, with Dr. Bonnie Basil with all her work, Stanford University, UCSF, all these organizations coming together to actually do more work to understand the truth of what's going on, and raw milk becoming more and more a part of that. Doctors are prescribing raw milk. You got the raw milk food freedom fighters, these moms going across state lines. They're really protesting egregious laws that the FDA is promoting. State laws are beginning to change. We've actually seen some real interesting sovereignty laws change in the last few years. And then cow shares are working in a working group. This is an important thing because the Secretary of Agriculture for California, her name was Karen Ross, who just came from the USDA about a year and a half ago, is meeting with raw milk producers and cow share operators here in California. Now, why would she do that? Well, for about a year, the cow share operations, and there's about 500 of them in California, as best we can estimate, were being run down, basically shut down, with cease and desist orders, with SWAT teams and local sheriffs and all kinds of stuff, because they didn't want to have raw milk getting out into the public without being tested and regulated. Well, we have a lobbyist who knew somebody at the governor's office, and the governor drinks raw milk. Jerry Brown drinks raw milk. I got pictures to prove it. Said, hey, Karen, you got to deal with this stuff. So she actually agreed to meet with all the cow share operators, and I'm one of the guys who actually met with me. And everybody and their brothers there. You got Western United Dairymen, huge dairy co-op. You got dairymen from conventional dairies there. You've got representatives of different senators. You've got the Department of Health Services. You've got cow shares. Everybody's sitting around this table. And the opening comment from the state veterinarian, Ann Whiteford, was, guys, thanks for coming. We really appreciate it. We know there's an emerging raw milk market. We're not even going to bring up the differences between pasteurized milk and raw milk. We already agree with you. There's a difference between raw milk and pasteurized milk. We agree with you. There's health differences. There's immune differences. We capitulate. We agree. I nearly fell on the floor. I nearly fell on the floor. It was a complete capitulation and surrender on day one. The first thing out of the state vet's mouth. We just want to do it safely. I said, we agree. We're off to the races together. And this Karen Ross was sitting right there. She said, yes, we have to support this emerging raw milk market. We have to do it in an organized fashion, this and that. And I made a little speech. I said, Karen, thank you so much for coming from the USDA to take over in California and be our Secretary of Agriculture. We really appreciate you coming out here. Because you know what? I Googled her real good. I knew a lot about her. I did my work on her. I said, you were the one that gave birth with Michelle Obama to the Get to Know Your Farmer, Get to Know Your Food program. That's a wonderful program. It connects farmers to consumers. It does farmers markets. It's real food for people. It's great. But guess what? When you do it, it looks just like raw milk. And she says, yes, we agree. And she went on for 10 minutes about how great the Get to Know Your Farmer, Get to Know Your Food program was, and how they were going to support us and encourage us. And that's what started the working group. And it's been very successful. We've done it 6 times now. We've actually come up with standards for when you have 2 or 3 cows, you can do that. You can legally sell your milk as long as you voluntarily do your own certification. They won't inspect you. There's some intelligence to how you do that. And it gets them off the back of these small cow share operators. But it's really brought up a lot of angst in terms of the dairy industry just dreading the fact that people are getting by the processors and doing their own thing. A lot of freedom stuff there. So good stuff going on there. And the markets are growing. All voting is happening. We're growing at 20% per year, and all I'm doing is going out and talking to people. I don't do marketing. There's not a thing I'm selling to you tonight. I ask you all to do your own independent diligence, do your own studies. Don't believe me. Talk to another consumer. Find your own true north in this. Because that's why it's grown. Truth always grows. Lies always die. So pretty powerful stuff going on here towards the future, and it's very exciting to see that occurring. There's the evidence, right there. My wife doesn't like that shot because she said it was staged, but it was totally impromptu. I said, honey, take a shot of this. But Jerry Brown gets credit for actually signing a law in 1977. It was the 95, it was the 35-922-928F, which actually assured every citizen in the state of California the right to access raw milk. He's also the governor back in the 70s that signed the California Farmers Market Bill. It allows us to have certified farmers markets. So he's a good guy. He's under a lot of heat, but nonetheless trying to do his best in an impossible situation. He just announced in the news today he was cutting $2.5 million out of CDFA's budget. Ouch! My inspector is probably getting it. Yay! I don't know if that's good or bad for us, because if I don't have an inspector, if they do something bad to me, they'll wait for a month to get inspected. But nonetheless, payback. So anyway, it's interesting to see things happening at the governmental level, and there's a point at which there's a tipping point that occurs when you've got a bunch of CHP officers that do his bodyguard work, they're drinking raw milk. We know that because when one of our guys is going to get a speeding ticket down in Bakersfield, one of our delivery trucks got pulled over, he goes, "Oh, you're delivering, just give me some raw milk and get out of here." That's the kind of thing. When you got judges, when you have the chief UCLA cancer researcher, Anna Jewett, the chief UCLA cancer researcher, PhD, saying, "I love raw milk," meeting with me about working together on raw milk with cancer research at UCLA. The paradigm shift is tipping. When you hold Senate hearings and you bring in the chief UCLA gal, you bring in epidemiologists from UC Davis, you bring in all the brothers and sisters that drink raw milk and have their own experience, you bring in researchers from around the world, you bring in dairymen, you bring in everybody, and guess who doesn't show up? CDFA refused to show up. Most of the time they won't. And the dairy industry will be embarrassed because they would have to answer a couple of hard questions. The senator would ask, why is it in fact that you have so many allergies and deaths associated with pasteurized milk and with raw milk? And why is it in fact there's nobody in this room reporting lactose intolerance of raw milk, but all kinds of problems with pasteurized milk? Could you please answer that, sir, from Western United Dairymen? Do you have an answer for us? Hell no, I'm not going to go to that meeting. So that's where we start to really win, is because the truth prevails. And it will be the will of the people in time. Baby steps in time. Responsible production of milk, growth of market share, me saying, may I have another, sir, and keep on going. And don't worry about the stumbling blocks and just do the very best we can to hold our own and keep our eye on the prize. And others doing the same thing. John Shock Dairy in Hollister is starting raw milk production in about another 3 or 4 weeks. He doesn't know what's about to hit him. But the good news is he does own 6 Jamba Juices, and he knows about customers. He knows about inspections and stuff, and he's aware of that. He's not going into this blind, and he's been working with me for 2.5 years on this, and I'm very proud of the fact we'll have another raw milk producer in California producing raw milk locally for the Hollister area. Because there's so many people coming by the dairy saying, I want raw milk. So it's growing. It's exciting. And I'm not threatened by any additional producers, as long as we're all doing it well. Because when you go to sell raw milk, you don't ever sell raw milk. You teach raw milk. You can't sell a thing. Raw milk, what are you talking about, raw milk? The one time I'd say you probably sell raw milk is at a farmer's market table when a Russian immigrant comes right off the boat and talks to you. Oh my God, it's like that, come give it to me. I want raw milk. But everybody else, you have to teach raw milk. You have to explain why you would drink raw milk. And what the greatest thing that I've ever experienced as a raw milk dairyman is you're sitting at the table at a, Blaine's seen this too, you're at the farmer's market table. And you got somebody over here teaching to. It's like, what's raw milk? It's like 101A, right? It's like first grade raw milk. And this mom comes up here pushing people out of the way saying, give me as much as you got, please. I'm in a hurry, I got 3 kids and da-da-da, I love your raw milk. And this person over here goes, what's up with this mom saying I want this all raw milk and I'm just going to take 12 home? And they're going, well, I don't know if I want it or not. She goes, you're an idiot if you don't drink this stuff. I didn't sell a thing. She told him the way it was. Okay? And that's the beautiful thing going on in this cross-pollination of moms talking to moms and the truth just happening, which is really, really cool. So lots of really exciting things going on here going forward. The Raw Milk Institute, I very proudly was part of the start of that last year. And it is working on some standards, and the standards are about ready to be published. We've already vetted them through the Executive Council. They're being sent out to all the farmers interested. They're getting them right now. And they're very interesting. And they're not a top-down approach kind of standard. They set some really simple standards, and they are size appropriate. And what they permit is everybody to do raw milk safely, regardless of your size. If you have 3 cows or 300 cows. So it allows for you to have a model to follow and resources to engage with, to be able to have good conditions to produce raw milk, so you don't get a black eye. That's the idea. So anyway, this is very exciting to see Raw Milk Institute going forward, doing this thing. This is actually Charlotte up in Oregon. Here's some more studies. These are 3 huge studies that as raw milk consumers you want to know about. The Parcel study, the Gabriella study, and the Amish study. This one was done on 15,000 kids in 2006. This one was done on 8,300 kids just a couple years ago. This was done this year alone. All 3 of them showed that when children drank raw milk, they didn't have allergies and their asthma and eczema went away. All over Europe, and this was done in the United States. So 3 huge studies, completely unrefuted, all published and seen on the big websites. The FDA, the Department of Health Services, Allergy and Clinical Immunology. So we have really good studies now, all completely unrefuted. Powerful stuff. And the most important study is the one down inside of your body showing that when you drink raw milk, your allergies go away. When you drink pasteurized milk, it triggers your allergies. So, this is not something you go to the doctor and get a shot for. This is a personal responsibility kind of thing. The one thing I would ask everybody in this room to do is simply experiment for yourselves if you haven't already. And when you find the truth, share it. teach another person. Dr. Weston Price, his last words were, you teach, you teach, you teach, and then he died. And I think those are very, very profound words, because if you teach from the basis of truth, you will perpetuate good things in life. And that's precisely what he was talking about. I found the truth. Dr. Weston Price was not paid for by some grant from a processing company. He went out and he spent time around the world and found the truth. He wasn't paid to do that. He did that because he wanted to discover the truth. And his workings are based on the truth. Nobody paid him to do that. That was way before pharmaceuticals started to pay off people to get research. The bottom line is, teach, teach, teach is really where we're going to take America to a better place and create more jobs, reduce our medical crisis, and start farms that really actually work sustainably. And those three things are crises in America right now. We don't have any jobs. We have fewer jobs we need more jobs. We need to reduce our medical problems. And we need to do it in America. So I feel very proud that Organic Pastures area has 62 employees, growing at 20% per year, and nourishing a lot of people that have stories like Annie. So we're fixing the medical crisis, and we're growing jobs. We need more of that in America. And we need to have less of this industrial complex that puts farmers in bankruptcy because they've cheated everybody in the entire food chain. So this is a real powerful thing to take home as a message is dollar voting and personal responsibility really matter. So I hope tonight we planted some serious organic seeds that grow, that are nourished, and you too start to teach. Because there's no more powerful thing than have a healthy family and a healthy country. Because right now it is not healthy. You go into a bad place, a dark place very fast. I'm not exaggerating, it's horrendous. So we don't want our families to be educated in that way. We have to start eating better, and that's through being educated in how to eat. A lot of us don't know how to eat. We need to go to Dr. Getoff, we need to go here to see Joni, we need to see the West State Price Organization, we need to see our local farmers market, we need to start engaging in, and Annie, gosh, you're a teacher of this whole thing, engaging in understanding just cooking, eating. Wow, we have to do the fundamentals. And then from there, we will be fertile. We'll have a healthy generation before us, and we'll start eliminating some of these crises we're having. They're all over the place. So with that, I'd love to answer any and all of your questions and start a dialogue for the next half an hour, 45 minutes. Does that sound good?
A quick 5-minute break before we come back.